Before I begin this video, I have to put a disclaimer in. If you hate hearing the word bonus, you will probably hate this game massively. There is a heavy, copious use of the word in this game. Blazing Star is a shoot-'em-up video game developed by Yumi Kobo and published by SNK in 1998 for the Neo Geo, and has more than a passing resemblance to classic side shooters of the 80s. The player can choose from a variety of craft, each equipped with a different shot type, power and speed. Tapping the fire button will unleash a standard shot, or it can be tapped rapidly for a different shot type, or held down for a charge attack. Upon releasing the fire button during a charge, it will unleash a powerful, focused shot which can also be dispersed to cover a large area with smaller bullets. The effect and range of these attacks varies depending on the player's ship. Power-ups are littered across each stage that boost the power of the ship's weaponry. There are also other items that will increase the player's score and count towards their ranking at the end of each stage. Some of these are only revealed if the player eliminates specific waves of enemies. Some of the later stages introduce more stage hazards like narrow passages, and each stage ends with a boss fight which the player must complete in the allotted time to get bonus points added to their score. If not completed under the time limit, the player is forced to continue to the next stage without collecting additional points. Blazing Star has to be one of my all-time favourite games on the Neo Geo. This game has everything I look for in a good old-fashioned arcade game. Great graphics, lots of sprites blipping all over the place, an absolute ton of speech, thumping great tunes, and supremely addictive gameplay. It was another game I passed up the opportunity of owning. It wasn't as cheap as most of my other Neo Geo purchases, and it was about £120, which for an old school shooter was too much, especially when I was playing it for free on emulation. And over the years, I have always regretted that decision. And this time, it's nothing to do with price. It was to do with the emergence of conversions. By the millennium, a small amount of Neo Geo fans had decided to start collecting for the MVS, as the games were generally cheaper. And round about this time, a fair amount of MVS conversions were appearing dressed up as AES games, Shock Troopers being a regular. And not wanting an unauthentic version of the game, I passed it up, as I could not guarantee its authenticity. But looking back on it now, it does seem a bit silly, especially as I play most of these old school games on emulation these days. An authentic version of Blazing Star is a very, very rare thing indeed. It was released in very limited numbers and in Japan only, and so seeing an AES cart in the wild was a rare thing. But it's that scarcity that leaves it open to conversions and even piracy. But leaving all of that aside, this game was one of the best to ever emerge on the Neo Geo system in my opinion. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but this game captures everything that made a trip to the arcades great, and had an atmosphere about it that was just impossible to replicate on home consoles of the time. Even the Saturn or PlayStation couldn't capture this kind of atmosphere, as the games were always interrupted with periods of silence as the CD loaded up data. The intro looks fantastic and looked very much like the intros typically found on more powerful arcade hardware, with a decent amount of animation seen from the characters and a nice catchy tune to entice the player in. Once the game starts, there is more evidence of the illusion of more powerful hardware, with the levels having these pre-rendered backgrounds which you would typically find on 32-bit console games of the time, like Resident Evil and Final Fantasy. And while their use in this game is of a far lower resolution than 32-bit machines, they still look pretty good. The enemy craft in the levels have this odd cross between sprite and polygons. I mean, they don't use polygons, but the graphics are done in such a way to give off the impression that they do. Probably to keep up with the visuals found in arcades of the time. The end of level bosses in the game are brilliant, with some taking up the majority of the screen and having this choppy animated style of movement. It could have been better, but it still looks really good, I think. And when the screen fills up with enemies and projectiles, you can see the pre-rendered backdrops look disconnected with the gameplay in some way. It's not a criticism, more of an observation. The sound on this game is some of the best I have ever heard on a Neo Geo. The music in particular is superb. The opening level does sound a little weird at first. When the first few bars play, they sound out of tune, and then quickly get in tune, which I always felt was left in for a joke. The boss music is absolutely out of this world. Some of the bosses do not take long to beat, and you find yourself wishing the encounter would go on a little longer at times, as this tune is rocking it all the way to 11. It's just awesome. The sound effects are your standard fare of booms, explosions, laser blasts and the like, but the amount of speech in the game is off the hook. The little game commentator keeps saying bonus, power up, and if you like hearing that, you are in luck, as it's mentioned about 1 trillion times in the game, and if you don't like it, then you will hate it. But there is a crime against audiophiles with this game. As good as the soundtrack is, as great as all the sound effects are, this game only has a mono soundtrack, which is shocking. A game this epic and of that time only came with a mono soundtrack. And even though I have always favoured sound over graphics, it still didn't put me off playing the game. There is also a lot of poorly translated text in the game. When reading it, it makes no sense at all. Like the famous Zero Wing quote of, "All your base are belong to us." Blazing Star has also lent itself to a meme or two with the classic "you fail it" instead of game over. You fail it apparently being responsible for the epic fail meme. Or so I'm told. Blazing Star is one great game, with a choice of several craft, each with their own attributes, you're practically guaranteed several playthroughs, and some crafts make the game easier and others make it so much harder. But overall, the difficulty is a bit skewed. The early levels are easy enough, but then the challenge just ramps up really suddenly. I used to be able to beat this game with a single credit many years ago, but I can't now. But even with a few credits, I still find the game unevenly balanced in terms of difficulty. Again, it's not a knock on the game, as it's loads of fun to play, but at a full price of around £200 back in the day, you would have felt a little cheated. I have lost track of the amount of times I come back and play this game. As I mentioned, this game just sums up perfectly for me what classic arcades of the 80s were all about. It's loud and brash, but just so much fun to play. I could have seen me putting in many a credit into this machine back in the day, had I seen it in arcades. It's right up my street, so it is. At the time of its release, the arcades were well and truly entering another decline. And not even 2 years later, SNK had to declare itself bankrupt, and so fell a once mighty giant. And in 2001, Yumi Kobo, the maker of this game, also went into receivership, which is a real shame. But Blazing Star will always be remembered for being one of the Neo Geo's finest games, and serves as a legacy to the great company. And that was my look back at Blazing Star on the Neo Geo. If you like this video, then please do give me a sub and a thumbs up, or maybe even a comment or two below about your memories of Blazing Star. And a massive thank you to all of those who have commented on my videos and subscribed to my channel. Your comments, interactions and support really do go a long way in helping the channel grow, and I do appreciate all of you, so thank you from me. And that's all from me, folks. Thanks for watching.